In this video, I'm going to talk about some metrics that you can use to track how your business is going. So part one will be introducing one key metric that you can track from your profit and loss and just using your headcount to work out where you are and to help you benchmark yourself against your peers. And then the second part of the video, we're going to talk through how to compare your revenue potential or what you could be earning versus reality, and how to troubleshoot this in order to improve it, to make sure that you're truly hitting the business potential that you want to be. All right, let's dive into it. I'd like to introduce you to Ocean Pacific Pty Ltd. This is their annual profit and loss. You can see that in 3.5 million revenue, less 200 grand of COGS, gives them a gross margin of 3.3 mil. They've got $1.8 million in direct labor, so their staff wage bill, which makes up 51% of the revenue. That gives them $1.5 million to cover the rest of their operating expenses, which is called their contribution margin. They've got $1.5 million to cover the rest of their operating expenses, and then whatever's remaining is going to be their profit. You can see they spend a bit on marketing, facilities, and then all other OPEX, which gives them a net operating income of 780 grand, which is a net profit of 22%, which isn't a bad result. I'm going to give you one metric I think is really useful to help work out for your business how you're going against your peers and start to introduce the concept of metrics, but also benchmarking. So let's expand this a little bit. We're going to call it revenue per full-time equivalent, or revenue per FTE. David C. Baker, who's a great kind of thought leader in this space, he calls it billings per FTE, essentially, but it's kind of getting at the same thing. We're looking at revenue of 3.5 million, and then we're going to have a look at what our direct labor costs are, 1.8 million. So that's all the money we brought in, and that's our entire wage bill. And all I've done is work out an average salary based on our team's headcount. Now, I should point out, FTE means full-time equivalent. If you have two part-time employees working 50% of the week, that adds up to one full-time equivalent. So it's just making sure that you take into account anyone who's not working a full-time week. So this is assuming a full-time headcount of 14 people, and that's how we're going to base our metric off. And revenue per FTE is fairly simple, and that's why it's so powerful. You just divide overall revenue that you brought in by your full-time equivalent headcount. I should put that, FTE headcount, which gives you a revenue per full-time equivalent of $250,000. Here's a quick benchmark for you. I think at minimum, you should be earning 200 grand per full-time equivalent in your business. Healthy firms are doing above that. So 250 is really good. That's a healthy firm. And then top firms are doing 300K or above. So they're maximizing their revenue based on their headcount. And they're using systems to do that, really good value pricing. There's a lot of different ways you can try and do it, but that's the name of the game. I'll show you an example of how people might want to look at that. You can have a look at it over time in this example, where you track it month on month, and you can see the months where actually you're above your benchmark, you're above your baseline, you're knocking it out of the park. So you can see for October, for this example, we're 270 grand per full-time equivalent, which is fantastic. But it starts to give you a guide for where you should be, and starts to help benchmark yourself against your peers. And then you can start to unpack why you're not there and try and get there yourself. So that's results per employee, billings per FTE, revenue per full-time equivalent. And I think it's a really, really powerful metric, because all you need is your revenue, which you should have, your top line, and your team's headcount, which you should also know. And this will help you start comparing yourself and benchmarking yourself. So there's one metric. Now what I want to do is talk about how to improve that. So maybe you do this calc yourself and your revenue per full-time equivalent is not that. Say you've got 22 team members and your revenue per FTE is 160 grand. And you're like, uh-oh, how do we do that? We've got too many team members and don't have enough revenue. If we just open this up, I want to introduce this concept of revenue potential again. Assuming in this example, we've got a headcount of 14. So let's just reduce this a little bit. Assuming we've got a headcount of around 14 people, and assuming our hourly charge rate of $220 per hour, 46 working weeks in the year, hours worked in a standard week is 38, and we're assuming the team will work about 65% of their time will be billable. You can see our revenue potential for this business should be around that $3.5 million mark. And hey, guess what? Magically in this example, it's very close. You can see our P&L, we're 3.5 mil. Here for our potential revenue, we're only 21 grand off that. So you know what? We're on track. And you can see we're on track because our benchmark as a healthy firm, our revenue per FTE is 250 grand, and our revenue potential is right on track with where we're expecting it to be. But say, for example, your headcount was 22. And you can see now we've revenue per full-time equivalent has dropped to 160 grand. And guess what? With that 22 headcount, we should be a $5 million business. So we're leaving a lot of money on the table because our variance to the profit and loss is $2 million. And this is where you can start to unpack, okay, wait a minute. There's something going wrong here. We've got too many people on the team. We're not earning enough revenue. How do we start to shift that? So if we go back to our best case scenario example, if our hourly charge rate was 220, you know what? Maybe we need to start asking questions about if we're pricing and packaging our services correctly. Maybe we should be charging out at, I don't know, 250 an hour. And you can see that jump up there. What about if we got the utilization up to 75%? That really would help our performance as well. So you can start to play around with what are those levers we can pull in the business to improve that. But you can only start to trying to pinpoint where that is once you start tracking month on month these metrics, and then also track the hours that we're working and compare it to the reality of how many we expected to work on a job, how many we actually are, and then you can delve into pulling those levers and improving your business performance. All right. I hope this gives you some ideas and some actionable strategies to start tracking it in your business. You should be able to have a P&L, you should have some revenue, and you should be able to work out how many full-time equivalent or full-time employees you have in your team, and you can start to run this in your own business. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.